Lawyers Police of Reddit. What is the worst way you've seen someone incriminate him or herself when they were actually innocent? Story 1. My cousin was at his older brother's college party, and it goes so rowdy that the police came to break it up. The music is off, and they've rounded everyone up, and the cop asks, "Okay, who here has been drinking underage?" He raises his hand without hesitation. He was the only one. Story 2. Get dispatched to a domestic violence call. Female said her husband punched her in the face and the ribs. Female has multiple scrapes and marks on her face and ribs. My partner asks if he hit his wife, and he says yes. Partner asks him why he punched her in the face and ribs, meaning what led to the physical violence. Guy says, "Well, I was punching her in the face, but then she covered her face, so I had to work the body so she would drop her hands. Then I went right back to the face." He explains this as he mimes a Mike Tyson-esque bob and weave. Greatest confession ever. Story 3. I'm a law student, and a professor told us today about her worst one from when she worked as a public defender. Apparently, a convicted felon was riding his motorcycle when he saw a cop issuing a traffic ticket to someone else on the side of the road. He pulled over his motorcycle, walked up to the cop, and said, "Excuse me, officer, I'm a convicted felon and have heroin in my pocket." As his public defender, she asked him why he would ever do that. His answer, well, he was going to catch me eventually. Story 4. I've heard about the old DUI gotcha, when the response to recite the alphabet backwards is "I couldn't even do that if I were sober." But I don't know if that's just an urban legend or not. It sounds like something one might reasonably say in response, though. Story 5. My law professor had a client who was an accused drug dealer. He paid his bail in dirt-stained small bills his wife brought to the courthouse in 4 plastic shopping bags. Never did find out if they admitted to evidence. Story 6. To know if this counts, but when I was training as a PPO, my trainer told me about a guy that ran for no reason once. A Hispanic male was pulled over. He had no license or any proper documentation. It's so common here that many officers just write tickets and avoid deportation. Anyway, when asked for his license, the guy freaked out. He waited for his chance and then took off on foot. That prompted a whole chase that eventually included canine. The officers didn't know why he ran, and it's generally safe to assume someone who runs is dangerous. So Canine gets in there, and he does something to the dog off. The dog chews off his calf muscle. When asked why he ran, the guy just said he was scared. I don't know if he was charged. I doubt it, though. It was a shitty situation. TLDNR, please don't run from the police. Story 7. A woman came into the shop where I was working and tried to pay with a fake €10 note. The cashier noticed straight away and told her that he'd have to keep the note and that it couldn't be accepted as payment. She became really indignant and said that she had received a note in her change from our shop the day before. She insisted that since we had allegedly given her the note, we had to accept it as payment. Eventually, the police were called. An officer arrived, and we explained the situation. We were all annoyed that this woman was making such a big deal about it. The officer asked her if she had known the money was fake before she tried to pay for things with it. She said she knew. I just want to be clear, if you knew the note was fake and tried to use it, that's a very serious offense. He paused. On the other hand, if you hadn't noticed it was fake, it would just be an honest mistake, and there'd be no problem. She replied, "I definitely knew it was fake because they gave it to me yesterday in my change." We all rolled our eyes as the officer proceeded. "I regret to inform you, ma'am, that you are under arrest." TLDR policeman tells woman not to incriminate herself. She does anyway. Story 8. Saw a guy arrested for possession of marijuana and I think some oxycodone or something. At first appearance, the judge reads everyone the usual spiel about how first appearance isn't the time to litigate your case and to not talk about the facts. He gets to this guy and explains what he's been arrested for. The guy says, "Marijuana. Nah, I ain't had that. I just had them pills." Story 9. Oh, I have another story. This one is my own. So I got this call stating a security guard caught 2 people having in a car in a supermarket parking lot. I get there and find 2 cars parked next to one another in a semi-secluded space, one matching the description I was given. I roll up behind it with my lights all on and spotlights on them. I figure it would be an easier both dumb, go home type call. Nope. As I walk up to the car, the guy is stumbling out of the passenger side, pulling his pants up. I see him start to dig into a backpack in the seat. That's a big no-no. So I start shouting at him to show me his hands. He doesn't listen, so I shout louder. He jumps, and then I hear clink. At this point, I'm thinking, I look at his feet, and there lays a crack pipe. The guy and girl were obviously not there for just... I ended up finding insane amounts of cash and a variety of drugs and paraphernalia. The guy would have just gone home if he wasn't a jittery moron. He got the girl charged much higher than himself in the end, since it was her car all that was in. And I thought it would be an easy day. Story 10. First rule to follow with regard to police: never ever talk to the police without a lawyer present. Do not give a statement at the scene. Do not say a single word to them. Do not let police search your vehicle ever under certain circumstances they can. Do not let police in your house without a warrant ever. I hope you get the drift. Story 11. I was once pulled over in a shitty neighborhood. Being of a race that was not endemic to the area, the police asked to search my car. I was young and foolish, get off my nuts, said yes. And then jokingly added, remember though, this is my mom's car, so any crack is hers. Second search, canine search, and intimidating personal search all turn up nothing. I learned never to speak to the police, and all it cost me was a little dignity and a few constitutional rights. Story 12. Not innocent, but stupid nonetheless. We were all drinking in a hotel room one time and got a little too loud. Almost everyone was over 21, but one of our friends was still only 20. A cop showed up and gave a noise complaint and asked how old we were. Everyone said 21 or 22 except our friend, who said, 16, sir. The cop looked at him real strange and said he needed to check his ID. He looked at it for a second and said, this says you're 20. He replies, I know, sir. I thought I would get in less trouble if I was under 17. The cop tells him, you're a real stupid boy. You know that, and told us to quiet down. Story 13. My previous firm represented a small-time hood, B, an E breaking and entering specialist who loved gambling on horse races. He'd visit the same tab daily for years, and he would spend his daylight hours putting bets on the trots, greyhounds, and anything else that came his way. His nighttime hours were spent robbing people to fund his daytime lifestyle. He knew everyone in the tab, and they knew him. One day, after spending all day at the venue, he managed to lose about $30K on the horses. He thought to himself this, I'm going home to get a gun and getting my money back. He goes home, doesn't bother to change his clothes bin in the same place all day under CCTV, grabs a shotgun, puts on a balaclava, and goes back to do an armed rob of the place he's been at all day. He runs in, pulls out his gun, and then screams at the cashier, gimme all your money. The cashier recognizes his voice and his clothes. He yells back, Jimmy, alias you idiot, put that gun away. Jimmy's response, it's not me. I swear it's not me. Story 14. There was a case years ago where a man had been accused from breaking into vending machines and parking meters. The constantly denied the charges, then had his bail paid in coin. Story 15. One of my friends had had a couple beers and was driving back home. A cop was pulled over on the side of the road ahead of him with its cherries flashing. My friend pulled up and over right in front of the cop. The cop came up to see if he needed help, smelled beer on him, and gave him a DUI. He wasn't innocent by any means, but he wouldn't have been pulled over if he would have just drove on by. And I know drinking and driving is bad. I don't need to hear the lecture. It's just the only story I could think of, so I figured I'd share. Story 16. My sort of stepdad failed a roadside sobriety test. He was taken to the county jail where he registered 0 BC because he hadn't been drinking. I watched this happen. His lack of coordination is legendary. Story 17. My brother didn't exactly incriminate himself, but he sure made himself unpopular. He was DJing on a party boat when they got raided, just as the police were boarding their boat, and he claims he didn't do it intentionally. Having only noticed the police after the record was spinning, he played out KRS-One sounded to police, and of course a fair number of the partygoers were joining in with the whoop-whoop. The police were not amused, taking it to be a deliberate attempt at humor at their expense. Record got taken off. My brother got an earful. Story 18. My friend was speeding and saw a cop turn around for him, so he went faster to try and get to an exit to get away. Ended up getting pulled over by another cop. The cop asked him what he was doing in such a hurry, and he said trying to get away from another cop. He got a ticket. Story 19. Not a cop or a lawyer, but a security guard. There are these two people on the property I was overseeing, not illegal, and they cooperated when I asked for ID to note who was on the property after hours. When I went back to my booth, and they then proceeded to slash the tires and break the windows on my patrol car, all the while saying I can't arrest them because I'm not a real cop. I guess they forgot I had their names, ID numbers, license plate number, and faces documented and on camera. They were arrested 8 hours later. Story 20. I'm a criminal defense attorney, and this happens much more often than you think, and every time it happens, it is the worst time. That is, if you care about justice, to be sure, it happens in the interrogation room, but more often it is part of plea negotiations. Whenever there are co-defendants, you may find yourself with a prosecutor who just needs one or some of them to take the weight. Sometimes the discovery tells you who the heavy is, but a lot of times it's up for the co-defendants to decide. If Aaron's death has taught this country anything, it should be that sentencing guidelines and prosecutorial discretion put defendants in impossible situations that lead to desperate decisions. This was not only true with Aaron, but also hundreds of thousands of mostly poor, uneducated people every day. So, I have seen sons take a hit for their mothers, girlfriends for boyfriends, and every other possible permutation. Many times, these people are not squeaky clean themselves, but they're also not guilty of the crimes they plead to. Story 21. Perfect place for me to ask this question. If you're on a highway expressway on the left lane and a cop comes up behind you to pull you over, do you pull over to the left or cross to right? And if it's to the left, can you cross the Hov divider? In my state, you can only enter exit Hov lanes at certain points. There's no physical divider, but the roads are painted. The thought came to me while driving on the expressway the other day. I realized I wouldn't know what to do if I ever got pulled over, as I'm almost always in the left lane. Story 22, as a firefighter, we once rolled up to a car accident where this kid, about 17 years old, had run into the concrete pillar under a highway overpass. Car was totally wrecked. Kid's arm was broken in 3 or 4 places and was bleeding pretty bad. The first thing he said to me when I got up to his driver's side window, "The car is not stolen. There's no reason to call the cops." Normally people say stuff like, "I'm hurt bad," or "Get me out of here," but not this guy. He just kept repeating the car is not stolen over and over. We called the cops. Story 23, lawyer, since the accident. Have you done anything else to alleviate the pain? Plaintiff witness, I smoke weed every day. This was during a deposition and was not admitted before the jury because it was scandalous and impertinent. Story 24, I am a traffic cop in the UK, and we were filming for one of these Road Wars Police Interceptors Traffic Cops TV shows. As APRT of the show, they ask us to do some filming of pulling people over and doing routine stops. So we decide that the next car to go through the set of lights we are currently at will get pulled over, and we'll record what we do as part of a routine traffic stop. So this guy goes through in a normal manner, and we follow behind, pull him over in a safe location, and we all pile out of the car. I'm walking over to the driver's side, and about to explain to the guy that we're filming for this show, and they just want to see what happens during a routine stop check. He rolls down the window, and immediately, before I could even say a word, blurts it's in the glove box. With a puzzled look on my face, I ask him what's in the glove box. The drugs, comes the reply. So I detain him, cuff him, and put it in the back of the traffic car of my colleague, and I search the glove box and find a substantial amount of heroin. When asked back at the station why he admitted the offense, he said he saw the 2 police cars. One was a backup car, and all the yellow jackets of the camera crew, and thought the game was up. If only he knew. Technically, he was actually innocent because he hadn't committed an obvious crime up until that point. Story 25, everyone is posting stories of them, or someone else, confessing and getting into. My story is different. I confessed and got off scot-free. Here's my tale. I had met up with a friend that I hadn't seen in a bunch of years, and out of melancholy and indifference as to where to go, we ended up just buying a couple 6-packs and sitting in front of our old high school in my car while drinking them. So we're sitting there just listening to music and laughing about the old times. And I noticed this one car has gone up and down the street a couple times with 2 dudes in it and watching us. The moment I point this out to my friend, they pull a U-turn and block our path while flashing their badges. Not that we were even thinking of driving off. I quickly give my beer to my buddy and tell him to dump it out his window. But he must have been a little more drunk than I, though, because he just sat there looking at me while the cop came up and tapped on my window. Now he's asking us what we're up to and checking my license, and him explaining why we're there and stuff. After like 10 minutes of checks and nothing comes up, they give back my license and they just stays there chatting with us while my buddy still has the beers in his hands. We end up talking about their kids and growing up, etc., etc. And in the end, when the conversation just flounders a little, they're just like, "You're not okay. Well, take it easy, guys. You can have one more beer and then you're going to have to continue drinking at home." We finished our beers and take off without even a written warning. This will get buried, but whatever. My cop friend told me of a guy that was really high and driving around with a couple pounds of marijuana in his trunk. He became super paranoid that he was being followed, pulled into a gas station, and called the police on himself. Story 26, not a lawyer or a policewoman, but 15 in a park with some friends after our GCSEs. British. Obviously drinking age is 18, but we've got some vodka, and we're just a group of stupid 15-year-olds who have never really been drunk before and aren't going to get drunk that day, as it turns out anyway. We've been there for about 15, 20 minutes when a girl opposite me notices some coppers walking towards off. We're worried, and one of us quickly goes over to a bush with a carrier bag full of bottles, full bottles, mostly, and puts it in there to hide it. The coppers come up and ask up what we're doing. "Oh, just hanging out," we say, and they ask us what we just put in the bushes. There's a brief conversation where it comes out that we had alcohol. The coppers are obviously just a bit weary and not in the mood to deal with kids in the park who aren't even causing a disturbance, so seem to be about to leave us be. They ask for our names, and we go around the circle until they come to me. And I give my full name. I have 3 middle names, all with several syllables in them. The coppers look at me, and I realize that I wasn't meant to give the entirety of it. It's a bit awkward, and they ask me to repeat it. I now don't know what to do. Do I give just my first and last name, or the whole thing? What do you want me to repeat? So I repeat my full name again. The policeman looks at me, and says, "Did you just give me your full name?" Again, I nod. He looks at me and is clearly unsure of how to deal with this idiot. He then asks something along the lines of, "What are you planning on doing with your life?" To which I answer, "I want to live in a caravan and smoke weed all day and never work," because I was slightly tipsy, having never drunk before, and being a really innocent and sheltered 15-year-old in some ways, I thought it would be funny. I really have no idea what I was thinking. I'm having to dredge up the memory. The entire circle is silent. The policeman is staring at me, and am inwardly going, having realized what I've done. There's a standoff for about 10 seconds, until the policeman says, "Oh, this is such a waste of time," puts away his notepad and off. TLDR, 15-year-olds in a park telling coppers they're going to grow weed in a caravan and giving middle names. Story 27 here is a list of video links that Redditors have posted in response to this submission, deduplicated to the best of my ability. Source comment video link. Jazza Theater, great idea. Sottily Judy. Dumb and Dumber Whittler talk to police. Late night grumbler. Funniest DUI test ever. Circle can break these cuffs. Video link bot. FAQ feedback playlist of videos in this comment. Story 28. Once the cops pulled me over as I was riding home from a friend on my bicycle. I had a bag of old 144 meg floppy drives. Suddenly out of nowhere, 2 cop cars corner me, and I almost slam into one of them. Out comes lots of cops, and one of them goes, "Hey you, what are you carrying in your bag over there?" With adrenaline rushing through my system, my idiotic brain goes, drugs, lots of drugs, and one of the cops pulls his gun out of the holster but doesn't aim it at me. I nearly shat myself, but I smiled weakly and went, "No, just kidding, they're just floppy disks," and I opened a packet and showed them the disks. Now, I was stupid to do this even because they were all filled with copied games and whatnot, and this was during the don't copy that floppy age. My god, such stupidity. Anyway, they let me off with a warning not to be a snarky. Haha. I didn't listen, so the joke's on them. D-sloth claws serve as their only natural defense. A cornered sloth may swipe at its attackers in an effort to scare them away or wound them. Story 29. So you say you're afraid of incriminating yourself if you're ever accused of anything. Watch this video. Everyone should see this video if you're ever accused of something. Don't, I repeat, don't speak to the police about anything. You ask for a lawyer or call your own. Then you exercise your right to remain silent. 1. You can't say anything to help you. Anything you say can be used against you in court, but not to help you. Our fair justice system apparently allows hearsay when it can crucify you, but not to help you if you're innocent. 2. You can't talk yourself out of being arrested. If a cop gets in his mind to arrest you, they will. They only make it seem like you can talk yourself out just so they can get any more evidence against you. 3. Even if you're innocent, you will inevitably say something that will incriminate you. For if you're guilty and want to confess, there's time for that later. You can plead guilty later after possibly making a plea deal. You can possibly work a deal out and make compensation to any victims. You'll be treated fairly rather than hung because of some confession you made to police. Story 30. This is a video of a lady telling a cop on the show Cops that a lady owes her $20 for selling her fake crack. When he approaches the suspected dealer, she says she's not a crack dealer. She's a prostitute. I laughed so hard when I watched this the first time. Story 31. A few years ago, me and my friend were smoking in the school toilets and he got caught. But I was in the clear, and the teacher went, "Is there anyone else in there?" And I said no. Saturday detention. Story 32. I'm late to the thread, but this story is too epic not to tell. A friend of my sister's had already been ticketed twice by her college police for underage drinking. Her parents told her she got ticketed again, they'd pull her out of school. So when the cops pulled her and her friends over one Friday night, she got the bright idea to flee. The cops caught her and cuffed her, so she ran again, this time managing to hide in the bushes and wriggle her way out of the cuffs. She stumbles home. The next day, the cops knock on her dorm room door. They ask for her by name, so she pretends to be her roommate. The cops give her a business card and tell her it's very important she contact them ASAP. She flees her dorm room and spends the next couple days hiding in friends' dorm rooms, including my sister's, for a few hours. She gets phone calls from friends of hers. Apparently, the police are pissed and canvassing the campus for her. They found her photo at her sorority house, so they know she lied to them. One of her sorority sisters finally convinces her to turn herself in. She gets charged with a long list of crimes, including several felony charges. Her parents decided to leave her in jail for the weekend instead of paying her bail. Once she gets out, she spent several hours combing the bushes where Shed hidden to find the handcuffs, since one of the charges was theft of police property. Why is this story relevant to this thread? Because the cop that caught her and her friends that night forgot his breathalyzer and let the entire group off with a lecture. Story 33. I expect this to be lost in the comments, but if one person sees at least I helped this video is why you shouldn't talk to police. Just watch the first 5 minutes. And if you think it's not worth finishing, by all means stop, but it could save you someday. especially if you're innocent. Story 34. I interned at a district attorney's office. When the victim of an armed robbery was on direct examination, the prosecutor asked him, "Can you identify the man who stole your purse at gunpoint?" She pointed to the defendant, and when everyone looked at him, he was raising his hand. Story 35. So when we were 16, my friend was driving alone at night on his moped. It's fairly common in Norway to drive a moped with illegal modifications to the engine. They're really slow, and you can't drive a car until you're 18 here. So when the blue lights flashed behind him, he figured it and tried to outrun them. He makes a U-turn and heads for our old middle school, then reaches back to flip the license plate up. He makes it through the school and loses them, as the car can't chase him through a narrow path he took. However, the license plate fell off when he tried to flip it, and they just drive to his home later the same night. Dude got a ticket and 2 months suspension on his license. Funny thing is, they weren't even trying to pull him over. They were on their way to something else, but the random U-turn made them suspicious. Story 36. That's why you don't talk to the police. Don't try to explain yourself. Don't deny anything, just don't talk. Invoke your right to a lawyer immediately and say nothing further. Story 37. One time my friend was drunk and broke some girl's window, so they called the cops. They came and told him to get on the ground. He replied, "I'm on the ground." The response was a taser. Story 38. I heard about a bloke who admitted to shooting an officer, but at the same time denied shooting his subordinate. The whole thing got turned into a song. Story 39. Friend of mine lost his license for running out to his car and getting CD of tunes we were working on from the stereo. He had to put the keys in and start the engine to turn on the stereo, and a cop pulled up behind him. He was hammered like Jesus hands, but he had no intention of driving at all. Story 40. I got a DUI last year. For the roadside examination, I was told to say the alphabet from A to W. I was unaware that they copy exactly what you say on the police report. This is what was in the comment section of B, C, D, E, F, G, W, H. I still have that police report and not a cop, but since I'm in downtown Detroit a lot, I've seen literally, some guy took off running when the police pulled up at a stoplight. I guess he got so nervous that he had to walk over to the grass beside the sidewalk and take a. Story 41. My friend was driving myself and a few other people home from the Salt River and was stopped at a DUI checkpoint. Cop asks if he has anything to drink, and you not know I haven't drank anything today, but I did smoke. But earlier, took him out of the car, arrested him, and booted us out of the car so they could tow it. Story 42. Probably get buried. But I had a client who immigrated legally from a Central American country and was now a U.S. citizen and was asked something to the effect of, "Did you bring your green card?" And he said, "No, I don't have any papers. He's a U.S. citizen. Why would he need papers?" Well, the person taking the deposition took this to mean he was illegal. That was a fun little mess to sort out. The other attorney now knows to ask their legal status first instead of just assuming. Story 43. I had a cop pull me over the other day. Scare me so bad. Made me think I stole my own car. "Get out of the car. Get out of the car. You stole this car." I was like, maybe I did. Chris Rock. Story 44. I had a case where a cop was stopping a car for some minor traffic infraction. Can't remember what it was, but something like rolling through a stop sign or no taillights or something like that. He then takes off in his car, but is shortly thereafter cornered and caught by the police. Now he's being arrested for fleeing when he starts fighting the cops. Ends up with felon fleeing and resisting arrest with violence. Once in the back of the patrol car, he apologizes to the cop and says, "I just didn't want to go back to jail." Story 45. One of my high school buddies kicked his baby mama in the stomach in front of their kids. During court, he raised his hand and said that she rubbed dish soap in her eyes to get at him. His current girlfriend, whom he met in a court-appointed class, is one of those pregnant women holding a sign at the off-ramp. Story 46. One common one that I've heard my cop friend reference. "Officer, I need you to say the alphabet A-Z, then say it backward from Z-A. Driver, what? I probably couldn't do that if I was sober. Officer, so you're not sober now. Driver." Story 47. Not innocent, but definitely incriminated himself. There was a guy not too long ago picked up on petit larceny. He was going to be out in a month or two. On the way to the prison, he freaks out, jumps a couple razor wire fences, and escapes. Not only did he get a bunch of very serious lacerations, but now he's on the hook for escape felony, at least a year. Story 48. Ask for a lawyer immediately, specifically, and persistently if necessary. It should be the only words out of your mouth if you are in a custodial interrogation. Story 49. I'm neither, but I had a friend in high school who got into an accident and no one was injured, where she totaled her car and ripped up the back of a truck decently. Her parents got her a new junker car, and her license was suspended for a month. She was determined to keep working. So on her way back from work, she came across a ride program for non-Canadians. It's a drunk driving prevention program where they stand in the middle of the street and stop every car to ask you if you've been drinking. Very successful and doesn't really slow traffic. Usually they don't get to license and registration, they just check if you slur your words, etc. She freaked out and turned around. Obviously they pursued her, and she got her license taken away, and her car impounded. Not worth the extra shift. Stupidest thing was that she told us she will never ever not get jokes about it. I've never had someone innocent incriminate themselves. However, I did arrest the wrong guy once. There was a fight at a bar, and the suspect was described as a white male late 20s, about 510 180 pounds, with medium-length brown hair, wearing a white t-shirt, jeans, and a green Celtics jersey with the number 23 on the back. I just happen to be driving by as the call comes out and see someone running across the street that perfectly matches the description. The victim positively IDs the suspect, and he gets arrested. The suspect says it wasn't him, which is what everybody says, but this guy actually seemed believable and was very pleasant. The next day, I get some video of the suspect and can immediately tell that the suspect was not the same guy that I arrested. I had the DA drop the case and call the guy to apologize. Story 50, not a cop. But relevant, my favorite was when my underage drunk friend got in an argument with a bouncer at a club who suspected he had been drinking, and in with my friend, totally straight-faced, holding out his hand and shouting slap BTM not drunk. He doesn't remember it at all. Story 51, falling asleep at the police station when you're arrested for DUI. Most DUI stops are late at night. I've seen more than a few flimsy DUI cases result in guilty verdicts simply because the defendant fell asleep in the cell. Story 52, lawyer here. The worst ones are when people are caught with possession and admit whether it's true or not having a commercial interest in it. E.g., it's not for me. I don't even use drugs, supply, or trafficking is a much worse charge than possession. Story 53, I think this actually meets the criteria. When I was in college, there was an off-campus location that everyone went to go drink party, and you had to walk along this long, winding path through the woods to get there. So we're all walking along in a large group of people, and halfway there, we turn around a corner, and there are two cops standing right there. I have a beer in my hand. Everyone drinks and walks to the spot, and being a younger-looking guy, they pull me aside from the group. One cop asked me, "Are you 21? I said, "Yes," thinking I'm at least 21 years of age, but then immediately said after, "Well, no," he looked at me as if he was going to arrest me on the spot. And then I continued, "Actually, I'm 22. That was kind of dumb of me, but he just asked me to dump my beer out and sent me on my way." The end. Story 54 had a friend who got caught by a cop hotboxing his car in a church parking lot. Apparently, the officer thought he had a lot more drugs cause after searching the car and getting really pissed, he started yelling, saying that my friend had crumbled all the rest of his drugs up, and that was destroying evidence and 3 years in prison. My friend then informed the officer, "I didn't destroy evidence, sir. You're just 30 minutes too late." He then not only received a ticket, he was dragged in for DUI since he was sitting in his driver's seat. He luckily got out of both. Story 55 worked closely with people going through youth court for the past 4 years. There are so many upsetting things about the system that I won't go into, but suffice to say that I've lost most of my faith in traditional justice process. My favorite, almost incrimination that I may have stopped, picked up a girl, 18, who was leaving an abusive relationship. She told me that she had a guy with a gun who would kill her ex-bats hit crazy guy, might have done it, and was about to make the call. I tell her it's crazy. She just left the guy angry, she told me. And if she was caught, I sure wouldn't lie for her. Plus, I say she's making the call to batshit crazy gun guy on her own phone after a fight that's logged several places. Does she think she'll get away with that? Thoughtful pause, liquid ants. Can I borrow your phone? Stunned silence. No. Story 56, my roommate stole 2 TVs and a bunch of equipment totaling $14,000 from Best Buy. When I worked there, I was loss prevention. I see him walking out. Tell him, "See you at home," and he goes on his merry way. I had no clue he was stealing. He had just come into a decent $80,000-ish inheritance, so I had no reason to believe he might. I get home that night. He tells me he stole it. Next morning, I'm standing outside the doors waiting for the opening manager 0600. I tell the manager what happened, where I live, and my roommate's name. Manager brings me into the office to write a statement. 10 minutes later, cops show up, and the manager says he coached the guy on what to do and just got scared that he would be caught. Arrest him too? Cops placed me under arrest, although the arresting officer told me in private she didn't really believe I was in on it, but it did look bad. Taken to my house to collect the evidence. Roommate discovers I ratted him out. 4 cops pounding on the door with me, behind them while telling them, "Guys, I gave you permission to enter. I live here too. We'll do that." Roommate then proceeds to tell officers it was all my idea, and he didn't want to, but I told him I would get him evicted if he didn't do it. Expensive lawyer hired. Lawyer tells me if you had never reported him, even with you letting him walk out on camera, they never could have touched you. Lawyer says if I want to fight the charges, he'll defend me. But my roommate was saying I was involved, and odds were 5,050 at best if we went to trial. I tell him plan on going to trial, but if the DA comes back with a plea to misdemeanor with no jail time, well, take it. DA wanted to take a hard line and kept offering plea to felony theft, and I'll only get 180 days in jail. Kept saying no, and my lawyer agreed. Said take it to trial if they want to offer no jail time. Eventually, they came back with 2 years suspended, and conviction will be set aside after 2 years of probation. But still a felony. Took it as the conviction dropped after 2 years. Still prevents me from obtaining a security clearance, but that's all. Grand total 2 years probation, $6,500 in lawyer fees, and realistically about 4 years setback in my life as a whole. All because I try to do the right thing. Upside now, I'm the second youngest salaried manager in my company, and just got informed it'll be promoted in the next few months. Edit, because every time I tell this story, people call me crazy for copying a plea to something I wasn't guilty of. If I gone to trial and been found guilty, I was facing up to 10 years in jail. Unlikely they would be so hard, but it was a risk I was willing to take.